All right, so today I'm giving a talk on making predictions conditionally. So in the course of this talk, I'll be covering some stuff about odds and dependence. It's just from probability theory. A lot of stuff about prediction markets, which is mainly what this talk's about. And then actually implementing this as an Ethereum contract, so conditional tokens. And finally, I'll give a brief overview of how you can exchange these conditional tokens and what that gives you. So, first off, odds and dependence. People are generally interested, I feel, in the odds of things. And in a sense, it's really tied to what people believe, or what you might believe, or what I might believe. And you can say maybe that you could even quantify these beliefs by probabilities. So for example, I might be certain the sun will rise tomorrow morning, and I'd be like, well, the probability of a sunrise happening tomorrow morning is 100%. Or I might not quite believe that a particular quarter will land heads up. So I would say, probability of that coin landing heads up is 40%, for whatever reason. Okay, in fact, this isn't like entirely the whole picture. A lot of events depend on each other. For example, maybe I want to think about two different parameters about weather tomorrow, like will it be cloudy or clear? Will it be wet or dry? And so maybe my beliefs, sort of like in this diagram, if my beliefs are sort of like this diagram, then I might believe well, tomorrow will probably be dry, because if you add up everything in the dry row, it ends up being 60%, which is more than likely. And also, I have no idea whether tomorrow it will be cloudy or clear. So if you add up the columns, we'll see that they both add to 50%. But if I assume that it's cloudy tomorrow, I'm going to believe that it's going to be wet more likely. So that's basically something from probability called conditional probabilities, and it's a hint that beliefs are complicated. They're sometimes just a single question can't capture a person's beliefs and stuff. It's maybe a bit more, you have to dig a bit deeper. Also, I want to give a warning about this. You should not confuse it with cause and effect. Dependence and cause and effect are different things, though there is a relation of sorts. Okay, so put that aside for a moment, and then we'll talk about prediction markets. And so, prediction markets, an overview of this is something that can be used to aggregate beliefs. So you go from what one person believes, and you just aggregate that into what everybody participating in the market believes. And this is also a good way to aggregate beliefs, because kind of all participants in a prediction market would have skin in the game, in some sense. So I'll be talking about a few different kinds of prediction markets. One of them is a categorical market. You have a question that resolves to one of many outcomes, but only one of those. For example, you might have a question: who will be elected head of the Loon Preservation Committee? And then maybe it's Alice, Bob, Carol, or Dan. And so in order to have a categorical prediction market, you have to have some collateralizing it. So for example, maybe you have dollars, and you convert these dollars to Alice dollars, Bob dollars, Carol dollars, and Dan dollars. And then the idea is eventually, if Dan gets elected, that the Dan dollar would be worth the actual dollar used to collateralize the set. And then you get information from the market of these assets, the market price of an Alice dollar would then estimate the odds of Alice being elected. All right, scalar markets are similar. So scalar markets will resolve to a value in a range. For example, how many loons will be counted in next year's census? You might have a low of 0 loons, all the loons die, or like you might have a high of 1,000 loons. So, okay, so there are a lot of loons in somewhere. So with scalar markets, you, for example, convert this dollar to a no loon dollar and a kilo loon dollar. And then you might have a kind of a payout curve. So if there are 250 loons that are counted, that's like more close to 0 than it is close to 1,000. So in this case, the no loon dollar would get 75 cents for each unit, and the kilo loon dollar would only get 25 cents. And you can kind of see in the graph how that works. Now, the market price of both of these actually allows you to derive kind of prediction for how many loons you expect to see at the time of the census. So, for example, here, if the price of the no loon dollar is 40 cents on the market, and likewise the kilo loon dollar is 60 cents, then you kind of go backwards on this graph to kind of get a prediction of 600 loons. That's how many loons are expected to be counted in the census. And then, so this part is combinatorial prediction market. So like sometimes it's useful to maybe think about how different questions are related, how these events might be dependent on each other. So in this case, let's try and combine these markets. And this way of creating a combinatorial market, you kind of make this grid of outcome assets things. So basically, each of these in the combined markets refers to an outcome from the categorical market, and like kind of one of the sides on the scalar market. But there are 8 in total, and kind of the idea is $1 can be swapped for the entire set. So it's a bit more complicated. One of the no loon dollars can actually be swapped for 4 of this set, basically the ones that contain no loon, and likewise for the Carol dollars can also be kind of swapped for the complete set that corresponds to Carol. And so kind of this, there's, if you get market prices for each of these, then you could actually see a joint probability distribution. You kind of see beliefs about dependencies between these events. So just as an example, like if the no loon dollar itself was 50 cents and the kilo loon dollar was 50 cents, so I might say, well, overall, I expect there to be around 500 loons. However, if Alice is elected, in this case, you have Alice and no loon, this asset being worth 15 cents on the market, and let's say Alice and 1,000 loon is worth 10 cents on the market. Well, both of these combined suggest actually that Alice has like about a 25% chance of being elected, but if she was elected, the no loon has like kind of 60% of that, and likewise the kilo loon has about 40% and so from this you could actually say, well, the expected amount of loons under a condition that Alice gets elected is 400 loons. So maybe Alice is not so loon friendly for some reason. Or at least the market thinks that. Okay, so also, as another example, you could actually do this the other way. So like maybe you see that Dan has the best chance of being elected, right? But like let's say later in the year you didn't pay attention to the election results, and then like you notice that there are not as many loons as before. You should actually have like according to this probability distribution, you should have expected Carol to have been elected. So that's another way to look at these markets. So the payouts get multiplied. Technically, it's a tensor product, but basically you just multiply them. And when the Oracle actually reports that, for example, Dan's elected and somebody counted 250 loons, that everybody else who's not Dan, those assets are worth 0, and Dan's $1 here gets multiplied by 75 cents and 75 cents. Okay, so how to implement this as an Ethereum contract? Well, first off, conditional tokens are kind of a way of codifying these rules about collateralization, and they only go up to the collateralization rules, so they don't actually explain how to exchange these, but I'll still go into like how this is implemented actually as a contract. So this is actually implemented as an ERC-1155 multi-token, which means that it is a single contract which contains every single conditional token, whether, and each of these tokens is associated with an ID. In this case, the nomenclature chosen to represent that ID is a position ID. So also the contract, the conditional tokens contract that we have implemented is Oracle Agnostic. Basically, it's any account, any Ethereum account that can provide an answer to some question, as long as it's formatted correctly. And finally, or no, not finally. So going further from this, in order to define a condition, you take an oracle and some question, and you just kind of hash it together. So like you get a condition ID out of this. So conceptually, a condition is kind of an oracle and a question. Like you have a question, and you have designated some oracle to be the chosen one to answer that question. Okay, so also have to briefly talk about this outcome collections. So you also collect a number of outcomes, like for a single question. So like you could create this thing called an outcome collection, and basically it's technically a non-empty proper subset of outcomes for a condition, but basically you could do things like specify Alice or Carol, or you could just say like Dan as an outcome collection. You can combine these outcome collections into a combined outcome collection, and the way you view the combined collections is you connect them with like an AND. So in this case, this outcome collection represents the eventuality in which either Alice or Carol gets elected, and the loon count's close to 100. So if both of these happen, like if Carol gets elected and loon counts close to 100, or if Alice gets elected and loon counts close to 100, then that situation represents this outcome collection. And this is a little simpler. It's like if this outcome collection represents when, like, if it's Dan who gets elected, but there are very few loons. Okay, so to get a little bit into technicality of things, so in order to represent these collections, you actually have to hash them into a cryptographic group. So like here, I'm choosing to use an elliptic curve, but basically you just take this and you hash it into the elliptic curve somewhere, and then to combine those, you just take the group sum. So here you add the IDs for this and that, and you get this ID. If you know anything about elliptic curve operations, and not like there's a way to add these hashes together that makes everything secure. And if you're curious about this in the literature, it's called an incremental multi-set hash. It's useful for hashing sets incrementally. So you could keep adding elements to a set without having to do too many modifications to the existing hash. Another aside, in this conditional tokens system, any ERC20 token may be used as a collateral. And finally, to get a position, you just take one of these outcome collections or combined outcome collections, and you associate with some collateral. So here it's Alice or Carol and 1,000 loons, and it's backed by Guy. And then, or like here's another position, it's just Dan, and it's backed by Leaf or something. So to get a position ID, you would just hash those together. It's pretty simple. And then like kind of the idea is that all of these tokens, all of these are contained in a single contract that is the conditional tokens contract. So also I want to recall that earlier I was talking about prediction markets in general. You have some collateral that you could split into these assets, like, and that is considered equivalent to the collateral. In the same way, you can do this with ERC20 tokens, except on the chain, kind of trustlessly, and backed by a contract of automatic execution. Yeah. Okay, so you also kind of split deeper, and this is how you get to the kind of combined prediction markets. You might go from Dan under backed by Leaf to Dan and 1,000 loons, and Dan and no loons backed by Leaf. I totally forgot to put that there, but pretend it's there. Yeah. Finally, this stuff is all great and it's conditional tokens, but a lot of the real value from this comes from the exchange of these tokens. So like this is where the information's at, like where you get the idea about the odds and market probabilities and stuff. So there are in general like kind of two big ways to do this. There's order books. You could have like a whole bunch of order books. The pro about this is you don't have a constrained liquidity with order books. You could like kind of put really big orders and have them match and not like move the price around too much, depending on the order book. But with these conditional tokens, just the sheer number of order books you'd have to manage would make it really hard to work with, especially as a user. On the other hand, you have automated market makers, someone like, for example, Uniswap Bancorp for just ERC20 tokens in general. Their liquidity depends on how much you're willing to kind of start funding the market maker, or how much loss the market maker can expect. But with this, you can also price these assets a lot more straightforwardly, and also, though I want to note that like with this, with combined prediction markets in general, like if you really get deep into it, it can, in order to generalize it, it can be really hard. So why not both? You know, you could maybe have an exchange type system where, you know, just the automated market maker is just some other participant. And in fact, we've also been thinking about this. This is definitely in the works maybe, you know, like just having a robot that does all the trades, and that way you don't actually have to process all this automated market making stuff on chain, which can be really expensive. Though there are actually pluses to doing this, the automated market making on chain, and that is that that contract can also act as a probability oracle, like an on-chain probability oracle about events in the future, which could be neat. Like, for example, maybe this on-chain probability oracle is like, well, here are like kind of what you can expect if any of these candidates get elected. Like maybe Dan's pretty good at, you know, keeping loons alive, and like Alice is also rather good at this, but like, you know, Bob not so much. He doesn't really care, according to, you know, like how a market trades, you know. And then maybe you could think of like governance mechanisms for this. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for a talk. Yeah. A bit of stuff to cover in 25 minutes, but yeah. Questions?
I know, like, we're definitely, you know, as you know, we work on prediction markets, and we're interested to see what's coming out and stuff. Are you guys, like, releasing any documentation on all these concepts, or, like, nice resources so we can, like, get caught up to speed so we can start using these contracts?
Yes. I'd like to say yes. We're working on it. Okay. I did this week. Like, this is all new content, so maybe you'll see it somewhere. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So I know, like, the elliptic curve edition is big in like cryptography, but where did that fit into?
Yes, why? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to that is I spent the last week like looking at some security vulnerability, and it ended up that was the solution. I just wanted to share it a little bit.
So it's for storing them uniquely?
Oh, okay, so it turns out, I'm just going back to the thing. So originally, when I was doing this, I just took the hashes of these and added them. And if you'd like to hack this contract right now, you could do something that's called a generalized birthday attack. And and it turns out that in order to defend it against this attack, you have to use some more sophisticated combining IDs thing. And then somebody proved that combining them with like elliptic curve thing basically turns it into the elliptic curve discrete log problem, which, you know, if that gets cracked, then all our current accounts are cracked, so I think it's okay. Yes?
Is futarchy the principal use case you have in mind for this combinatorial prediction markets?
The principal use case for us is not futarchy. I just wanted to highlight it at the end as like a potential use case. For us, it's really just about information discovery. So like just kind of the idea that you could see like kind of a bit more into like the conditional probabilities of things happening, that sort of insight might be useful.
Do you think like finance is a target use case of this? Like,
yeah, perhaps. I'm not a project manager, so I'm not entirely sure. I think we are talking about that a bit, though, maybe.
That makes a lot of sense with like commodities markets, because you're using like data from weather prediction market and all these other conditions, and you get an outcome that way.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? You have to get the okay from the regulators, so it depends. There's a lot that we
You
can't
have
do.
to give. But we gotta do.
I mean,
That's funny.
yeah.